Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. Welcome to another installment of Breaking the Audio Rules. Lately, I feel like it's almost become a rule that you need to spend a ton of time on a mix, tweaking, editing, and automating every single detail, and really obsessing over it for days or even for weeks. Now today, let's take a look at some of the benefits of working quickly on your mixes. The problem with going too over the top with details in a mix or obsessing over getting every last thing perfect is that you can find yourself chasing your own tail endlessly. This can mean you never quite finish the mix. And more importantly, you can lose objectivity and perspective on the mix. Now, why does this happen? As far as I know, no one's ever done any scientific research into the topic, but I believe it results from not knowing what you want from the mix, not having a clear, defined picture of how it should sound when it's all finished. It's very hard to complete an artistic work if you don't have a vision or even a hard target in mind when you start and that you can work toward. So if there's one thing to take away from this video, one piece of advice, that's it. Don't start a mix until you have a clear idea in mind of where you want to end up. I believe this obsessive approach to mixing is also a fairly new phenomenon brought on by the availability of the fantastic tools that let us dig super deep into our tracks and mixes. Microscopic editing and processing can be very useful, and I do it all the time, of course. But just be sure that what you're doing actually needs to be done, that you're doing this microscopic work or this obsessive work because the mix needs it and not just because you can do it. Can doesn't necessarily equal should in this case. And keep in mind, if you go too far with microscopic editing and processing, you may actually suck all the life out of the mix and end up with flat, featureless tracks. It's often those small imperfections that make the tracks come to life, add interest, make the music human, and that really help convey emotion and energy. So how long is too long? Or how fast is a fast mix? The answer varies widely, of course, from engineer to engineer, and it depends on the number of tracks, the music, and so on. I've heard that a pro mix engineer might spend an hour per minute of mixed music, for example. Others work faster, others might work more slowly. For me, I find that working quickly results in more live-sounding mixes with more energy and more realism, if that word makes sense. I tend to approach working this way from a console-based perspective, since that's how I learned to mix, on hardware consoles, both for live sound as well as for studio mixes. I find myself going more and more back in that direction, setting up my mixer and my DAW for more console-like operation, often with a channel strip on each track and with effect sends and returns just like you'd find on a console. I also find that using a control surface can help keep you focused on getting the mix done rather than obsessing over editing details. Again, this probably harkens back to my learning to work on tape with a hardware console, but if you've never mixed on a control surface, I think that you'll find that it takes your mixing in the direction of performing a mix rather than programming it, which can be a pretty big distinction in the final results. I recommend breaking the mixing and production process into at least two distinct areas. I do all my editing and prep work before I ever set out to work on the mix. All the tracks are cleaned, all the editing is done, any noise is removed, the tracks are organized and laid out in a way that makes sense to me, and so on. When I sit down to mix, the mix is ready to be mixed, which may sound funny, but actually makes a lot of sense if you think about it. I did a video on prepping mixes that you can find at the link below. An aspect of this, and maybe even an extra part of that prep stage, may be busing tracks to subgroups or what some might call stems, creating track folders and so on, so that you can work with the mix in bigger chunks rather than a huge amount of individual tracks. This is especially important for working quickly with larger sessions. Now, if your tracks are well recorded, you really should be able to get a great mix going fairly quickly. If you find that you're struggling, then maybe the music isn't ready to be mixed yet. You may need to revert back to that prep stage to figure out what's wrong. Maybe there are problems with the tracks or with the arrangement, which is something that you really need to consider. And maybe tracks are fighting one another in some way, frequency-wise or dynamics-wise. Maybe there's too much going on. Maybe you're trying to make everything louder than everything else rather than deciding what should be the focus in the mix at any given moment and then mixing the rest of the tracks around that focus. It could be a lot of things, but if you're struggling to mix more quickly, it might not be you or your mixing skills or the time you're spending. It might be the tracks or the arrangement you're working with. So why not give it a try? Pull up a prep session and try to get your mix going as quickly as possible. Set balances, EQ, add dynamics, and think like a pro mix engineer and keep the focus of the mix and the end result you want firmly in mind. You might even consider setting a timer and trying to complete the mix or a certain stage of the mix within a given period of time. Now, none of this is to suggest that you shouldn't spend as much time as you need to make a great mix. It takes as long as it takes, no less and no more. But the goal is to remove the temptation to obsess over things that don't or won't matter, or to get caught in an endless cycle of indecision. My final recommendation is to watch a pro mix engineer create a mix. While we can't all sit in a major studio and watch over a pro's shoulder while they work, there are many videos available where you can watch a pro mixer in action. For example, one of the most successful mixers of our time, Chris Lord-Alge, did a mix for us here live at Sweetwater's Gear Fest in 2021. The link for a video of this is available below. It's amazing how fast Chris works, and I'd suggest that's because his tracks are totally prepped before he starts, and he also knows what he wants the end result to sound like, and he can aim exactly toward that. So give mixing quickly a try. You may find it works really well for you. Thanks for watching this installment of Breaking the Audio Rules. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Click here for more videos like this, or start at sweetwater.com for all your music instrument and pro audio needs.